Okay, so let's spend some time discussing the differences between these two variations on the Mistress theme, because they're actually two wonderful representations of Ian's versatility in this direction. You obviously have a very comparable frame, right? So the basic shape of the handle in particular is retained. Oh, hello there, little friend. Okay, so this is a part of what sets the Mistress apart from all of Ian's other designs. The Crusade and the Omega, even the Paladin now, they all have these flowing lines, whereas the Mistress retains some of the edges, and I love that about the Mistress. It's actually why the Mistress to me is the sexiest of all his designs. Of course, that's very subjective, but I'm just saying I love what's happening here in the Mistress frame. There are notable distinctions, however. The difference between the Mistress R and the Mistress EDC, for instance, is going to be held primarily in the blade style. This is where we see the first and most prominent distinction. The Mistress R blade style is impossible to miss. Now, actually, that shadow kind of helps to show it off a little bit, huh? So the R, to begin with, stands for either recurve, and you see the recurve here in this little bow in the grind style. It either stands for recurve or raunchy, your choice. That's verbatim. That's what Ian told me when I asked that question. And so you see this brilliant grind. I mean, truly, there's nothing else like it. And it powerfully reinforces the edge, the tip as well. So it's a really strong grind. I quite like it, except I will admit that my preference is to this standard Mistress edge. So the standard Mistress edge does not retain that recurve. It's quite a bit more minimal comparatively, and yet there's still a really solid support of that tip and the grind all the way along. Both of these grinds, all of Ian's grinds for that matter, are standout. They're unlike any other designer that I've found yet, any other maker. It's a part of what makes the Mistress so special, but you can clearly see the difference between the recurve or raunchy style grind and his standard Mistress grind, or what I understand to be his standard Mistress grind. Additionally, you'll notice that the pivots are different here, and that's another expression of Ian's genius. His pivots are always different. I don't know if he's ever made two of the same pivots, but the pivot here is quite a bit larger than the pivot here, and yet in this case both of them feature a meteorite material, which is super exciting. Kind of amazing that I have two meteorite pieces, but larger, smaller. Now these are minor differences, right? Major difference in the blade type, minor difference in the pivot size, minor difference in the stud size. The studs on the raunchy are quite a bit larger than the studs on the EDC. The size in terms of thickness, there's a difference here worth noting. The Mistress R is quite a bit thicker than the Mistress EDC, and this is due in part to the fact that we're dealing with the difference between a frame lock and a liner lock. The frame lock, let's see if I can get this thing to stand. Will it stand for it? Yes. Okay. The liner lock is full micarta, show scale, and lock side. The frame lock is full titanium, so you can see how much thicker this piece is compared to that piece. And yet there's something about the design of the Mistress that really benefits from having the thicker show scale, or the thicker scales. They're both beautiful in their own way. They both feel wonderful in hand. However, the EDC piece feels almost invisible in hand and in the pocket. It's a really special experience to hold it. It's slender and lightweight and feels invisible without losing any part of its rigidity. It still feels solid. It still feels like a tool that you can use. Whereas this piece, it has a certain width to it that makes it feel like you're really holding something. So even though it's slender in this dimension here, the thickness here allows you to experience, I guess, a handful. It feels like a handful, you know? It really feels like a solid piece. Now, another distinction that we can draw between these two is the pocket clip and the backspacer. The pocket clip here and the backspacer being dark TI. So really, really beautiful dark TI. And you'll notice that the way that Ian has created this backspacer is using a lot of different angles. It's a really, really cool geometric patterning that he's introduced on this piece, which is not retained here. Here we have a much cleaner, much more minimal backspacer, which is something that I have to admit I quite like. So we have differences which are not only aesthetic, but also play out in the hand. I cannot say that I like one more than the other. I can say that I like them both differently. They are completely different knives on the same general platform. These are very, very exciting pieces. In this case, both pieces are riding on skiffs. I actually upgraded this one to ride on skiffs, whereas this one came on skiffs. And so here we have super smooth drop shut action. This is something else I love about Ian's knives. They're so fidgety. You can open them so many different ways. This extremely minimal flipper is absolute brilliance. I can't say that I've experienced it anywhere else. Certainly not as well done as Ian's. It's been attempted by other makers, but I'm typically disappointed. And in this case, I am so not disappointed. And then this guy is also running on skiffs, but it's a totally different experience because the detent on this piece is quite a bit tighter, which means that it snaps. It really snaps open and closed. Hey, it's starting to drizzle. This one also super, super soft and dependable opening and closing. Snappy opening, buttery closing. Okay, and now this is where I promised to show you the action on the Omega as well. So let's bring that in now. The Omega is on washers. Totally, totally different feel, totally different opening and totally different closing feel, and yet you'll notice that it takes next to no pressure to get it to drop closed. It still snaps open, fits in the hand very similarly, and then amazingly on washers it drops closed just like that. Now I could drop it closed faster if I wished to, right? Really amazing piece. The finishes on all of these is different too. I don't know what he's done with this one, but you'll notice it almost looks like an orange peel, but it totally is not. It's some kind of a bead blast, I would imagine. Whereas this one has a very smooth, kind of stone-washed texture to it. In the pocket, the Mistress EDC and the Omega EDC are very comparable. They have very small footprints, as you can see, and they're very thin. This one in the pocket certainly feels a bit different, but it does not feel bulky. It disappears just as easily as the other two. In terms of pocket clip and retention, the pocket clip on the Omega is the slimmest of the bunch and slides in the easiest of them all. Second to that is this one. This one it's so long that it just slides right into the pocket, very, very easy to pocket. And this is the tightest of the bunch, also very slender. Everything about this piece is tight in a good way. You know, it's honestly, it feels like perfection to me. Every one of these in their own way feels like perfection. And yet each one is its own animal. Each one has its own personality. So is there anything else that I can tell you about these? The detent on this is softer, as I mentioned, and yet it still snaps open. Snaps open, glides shut. Oof, so good. Centering on all of them is dead on, as one would expect from any of Ian's work. Fidget factor is there for all three. They can be opened using a flipper, using a the thumb stud with the thumb flick opening, or even a spidey flick opening. Ah, dang, I sometimes screw that up, to be honest with you. There we go, still learning. There it is. Fidget factor is there for sure. What else? The micarta is beautiful, feels wonderful in the hand. I think that's about it. I think that's about all I can really think to show off. You'll notice that the flipper tab on this Mistress is a bit more pronounced than the flipper tab on my other Mistress, and according to Ian, that's totally random. They just kind of come out however he feels like as he's making them. There's no direct standard to the best of my knowledge, and the flipper tab on this guy is very minimal too. So they're all minimal. Those people who ask for a non-flipper version of any of these knives, my personal recommendation would be not to remove the flipper, because it's already so invisible that, why would you want to eliminate a piece of that fidgety brilliance that is Ian's design. Aside from that, I think that's all I can really think to tell you guys. I hope this is useful to you. There's certainly more I could say, but we'll press pause here, and hopefully everyone who watches this has fun doing so. Goodbye for now.